Hello, this is Travis. Welcome back to the Painted Mini, and today we're going to do the Atreides, but mainly I'm breaking off and just doing the Fremen versions of all the characters. So all of the Fremen, and then we'll also do basically anyone wearing a still suit. You can see here, just super simple. I'm doing the Zenithal highlight using good old Citadel spray cans. That's Wraithbone and Mechanicus Gray. All right, and here we go. So I'm going to start us out, and I'm actually using a speed paint. All of my paints now are Army Painter. I basically use speed paint, and I also use the Fanatic line. And here you can see I'm taking that Fire Giant Orange, hardened leather, a little bit of water, and I'm using this to create this still suit base color, which is a little bit of an orange, maybe slightly more than in the artwork, but the art has sort of an orange tint. It needs to be brought out in contrast to the sand color. So I may have made a little bit more orange than the art for that reason. This figure is the leader figure. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over that still suit and kind of pick some of those, lots of piping or hosing or things tying into that armor. So you'll just kind of take a brush and pick your path and figure out what you want to be metallic. I didn't want to go with a pure metallic paint, especially with the Army Painter paints. They're very, very metallic, almost as if they have too much metallic material, and they don't quite have the smoothness of like the Vallejo metals. It's almost like putting too much glitter in the paint. But here I'm just going to pick out some lines, and that's going to be my armor. And by adding that regular flat gray color, it's going to tone it down a little bit so it's not too shiny. And again, I'm painting these to play a game. I'm not entering these in a competition, so I am a little bit sloppy here and working pretty fast. And just remember, whatever you do on one model, you're going to have to do with all the other models of that type. Now I'm doing the cloak, and again I'm using speed paint. This is the Pallid Bone. Mix with some water. And I'm not too careful, especially with the Fremen. They're out in the wilderness. They should have weathered, stained capes. So if you get a little sloppy, that's okay. And the last thing here is I'm going in and doing a kind of a purple color. It's the rough iron. Kind of has a purple metallic tint to it for the base color of the rock. And then I'm going to end up putting sand on it anyway, so not much of the purple's going to show. And here I'm just base coating nice and thick. And I'm going to go ahead and do the base. So I went with that desert yellow, makes a good sand color. Putting it on a little bit thick, just for the texture. And now I'm going to dab a little bit on top of the rock because the sand is going to blow around. It's going to get in the crevices. So I'm just kind of dabbing some of the sand around the rock. see it a little bit better. I'm going to add a little bit of white, make a lighter version of the sand. And I got me a nice cheap flat brush I'm going to use for dry brushing. And I'm just kind of dry brushing the rock and the edges. Just give it a little bit of dry brush effect. All right, and now this is our Dorado skin. When I do a skin tone, I usually end up putting a wash on top of it. So I go a little bit lighter than it needs to be. And since I've got this color and it looks like it's a natural highlight color for that pallid bone cloak, I'm just going to use it to work in some highlights. Just trying to be efficient. Okay. Okay, here I'm consulting the color wheel. Normally, I don't do the full triad. Usually I do kind of that split triad, which is the more acute triangle. But here I decided just to come up with a basic color scheme. There's going to be a lot of orange from the still suit. So I needed green and I needed purple. So the purple you noticed I put in for the rock color. That's how I chose the purple tint. And then the green's going to come in kind of subtly. I use this tainted gold, which is definitely a greeny gold. And I'm going to use that for the weapon. So not real strong adherence to color wheel, but just trying to kind of balance it out using those triangles. If you want to do really stark, vivid, you just do the complementary color. So you do kind of a two color and then everything else neutral. This is going to be very subtle. Like I said, you won't even see much of that purple rock or that green in the sword, but it's just a little bit of a tint. So now I'm going to go through and I'm going to use the wash. And always err on the side of thin. So you can always go back over and do another coat. I'm just going to put wash on the face. And let it dry and see how it goes. Now I'm just going to do some other characters, and it's pretty much the same process. I change a couple of the colors up on Chani and Paul. As far as the still suit goes, it's the same process, so you can definitely fast forward through some of these if you want. I have a lot more in this video than I needed. I even, at some point, I go in and try to correct a few things, and if you're not interested in that, just zip forward. I'll be sure to put all the chapter titles in so that you can just kind of bounce around and skip sections. I needed her hair to be a little bit different. I didn't want to go with black. I wanted to be a little different than that fire orange of the still suit. But again, anytime you have heavy texture in the model itself, like hair, these still suits have all that texture, speed paints are going to work really well. And for the type of model painting we're doing, it's just hard to beat them. My biggest advice I'll give with using speed paint is always thin them down, because they can look very bright and garish. I just use that same color I used on the cape earlier. I use that pallid bone for the knife. Technically it is a bone. And I didn't do her cape in pallid bone. Her and Paul, I decided to use this more of a yellow cape. And if you look at the artwork has a yellow cape on Paul. I just went ahead and did it for Chani so that those two would kind of match. And I'll end up using when I start doing the highlights, I use too thick a brush, and I just have some sloppy lines. So I'll go in later. I end up redoing the yellow on her cloak. This is Stilgar. It's the same color formula for the still suit. Pallid bone for the cape. And my vision is not great, and sometimes I don't see or notice or care about the defects in the model until after I've put a coat on it, and then it really shows up and annoys me. And that's what happened with Stilgar, so we will see in a bit. I end up scraping off some flash lines, kind of trying to smooth things down a little more, and then have to go back in and repair where I scratched the paint off. So you'll see I end up reprimering, and that's what I'm doing. Here I just noticed before I painted that Paul has a fuse, so I'm just using the back of a blade. Kind of clean that up a little. And this is our yellow cloak color. I didn't do the best job priming. I can still see some green underneath. This is all just base coat, so don't need to be too careful. Let's get a layer on, let it dry. I probably should have done the face first, the eyes, then the face, then the clothing. So you can see how good the speed paint works on that armor texture. All right, the still suit. I use Barbarian Flesh. This version of Paul, it's a little darker skin tone. When I do his noble court version, I'm going to do a much paler skin. For his hair, I'm going to use Gravelord Gray. Again, hair is very textured, so I think the speed paints tend to work really well. And I usually don't use a black. I'll usually just use the Gravelord Gray for hair, and then if I want it to be darker, I'll just do another coat on top. So he's rocking a Liza Minnelli bob. And we're mixing up some more pallid bone and water, equal parts. That's our cape and crysknife color. And I'm going to use that as a wash over his cloak or his cape. I usually don't use speed paint as a wash. It tends to be more reactive, but in this case, I don't mind so much. I'm willing to experiment. Speed paint and wash kind of have the same consistency, but there's much more pigment in the speed paint. Now I'm using the tainted gold color instead of the plate metal for Paul and Chani, because I wanted their armor to be a little bit more, not ceremonial. He's actually out kicking ass with it. But he is the Kwisatz Haderach. Just again picking out lines to separate the armor from the still suit. And now I just have a few other characters I'm going to do real fast. I have Liet Kynes. I have Duncan Idaho, the first, the OG Duncan Idaho. Because I'm not doing the bases with a speed paint, I don't have to be too careful. I can be a little sloppy and pull some paint down there. I'm just going to cover it with regular Fanatic base paint. This is Jameis, and he's probably the best model, articulation-wise, in the game. Or for my set, anyway. I know people have different results based on when theirs were cast within the life of the mold. This is an elite. Again, same formulas for all the parts. Okay, so right now I'm just focusing on the Fremen characters, and I finished all the armor. Some of them might be a little too shiny, so I'm considering, this is always risky, but going over with a light wash to kind of take some of that shine off of that armor. Otherwise, it doesn't feel very tactical. A little bit of grit and grunge in the desert is always good. In addition, I haven't really done much with the faces. Some of those smaller details I kind of want to go in and do. Um, and the third thing is maybe some more highlights on cloaks, maybe on some outfits, mainly the cloaks. And I've actually taken to scraping. You can see here on Stilgar, I've taken to scraping a little bit on the cloak. So there's some places where the paint needs to be fixed. You can see it right here as well. I should have done that before I painted, of course. I had some mold lines that I didn't really notice when I was initially doing it. And then the same goes with Chani here. You can see I've done a little bit of scraping on her cloak. So let's start out. I want to do a really, really light wash. So I have soft tone. And there you go. I do have wash medium, so I'm going to try that too, instead of just water. This is my little silicone, it's a poppet toy, but it makes a perfect little mixing tray for washes and metallics, things that you don't want to put on a normal palette. So I got like 2 little drops in there. And let me do, maybe I'll do 1, 2. That's 2 to 2. I'm going to do 2 to 3. And this has been my go-to brush lately. This little cheap AK Interactive. I've been using it so much that the whole fennel part is popping off. I need to glue it in or something. Okay, so here we go. I've got Stilgar here. We're going to start with Stilgar. Okay. Super simple. I'm just going to go over what I've made metallic. Again, I'm just trying to tone it down a little bit. That's a bright silver. Most of it. It's just not very tactical. I want it to be metal. I want it to come off as armored, but not super shiny. Okay, he's done. Let's do the same for some of these others. Some of them aren't too bad. They already have a little grit. Now, Chani and Paul, I did with a gold metallic. I don't know. I figure it represents his succumbing to the religious aspects of the prophecy. He does get swept up by it all, which we'll see if you haven't read all the books. It becomes even more apparent. So I don't know how much, but I think I did go through with them, with Paul and Shawnee. Let's look. And I did go through with a silver on top of the gold as a highlight, which I'll do sometimes, but it doesn't actually look too bright or anything. I might just keep that the way it is. It's fine. Already looks a little dirty. All right, my leader, I guess a naib. So mainly in game, I'm just going to let the base shape do its work. They all have different shape bases, so kind of reminds me of special forces units, how the officers and the NCOs aren't as formal. So I don't see them trying to show their special status overtly. I think they're more of a humble people on the individual level. It's about the community itself and not the individual. So what I'm doing here is I'm using my faux philosophy to justify laziness. Okay, Chani is a little brighter than Paul, so I'm toning her down just a little. So delete, Just gonna get her knee pads a little bit. Gauntlet. Duncan. Maybe just a tiny bit on the shoulders. Now, what I did, if you look at his weapons, I kind of did them a dark metallic, maybe too dark. I think I used a death metal. And then instead of highlighting, I actually just took a blade, the back end of a blade, just like you use to remove little flange lines. And I just scraped the edge to create the highlight. So I basically scraped the dark paint off. I don't know how smart that was or how done that was, but it gives it kind of a weathered look. Same. I'm going to try this too. He's out in the sun a lot. Put a little bit more of this tone on his face. Who else? So, Liat Kynes, you're looking a little pale, buddy. Give you a little bit more. Soft tone. Let's look at Stilgar. He's already pretty dark. I don't want to do too much. I'm going to put a little bit more on that gauntlet arm. We'll say of Jameis, if you look, this is probably the most articulated model we have as far as just the casting goes. And then I think I'm going to hit this sword. Okay, and then the last thing, do I need to places where I scrape the capes? I wonder if it can just be fixed, maybe with a little soft tone, or this cape. This cape doesn't have much in the way of shadow, so I might just add a little soft tone to it. Now, when you do a cape and you use a shade, you have to be careful, because if you just hold it up vertically and let it dry, it's gonna pull to the bottom and look funny. You need to hold it horizontal. Let's kind of let it set. I do have to apply more paint to Stilgar because I really scratched a layer of paint off getting this. So I'm gonna set him aside. And I don't mind on these Fremen cloaks if the wash shows up as kind of being dirty, which sometimes the wash will do that and kind of mess up your mini. I think that works perfect with Fremen cloaks. You want them to be dirty. For those of you who've read the later books, these aren't museum Fremen. I can't even tell what that is. Okay. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and make another cloak color batch for Stilgar. And to do that, go to my notes. Still suit armor cape is pallid bone. That's it. Let's do. Oh, God, that was too much. Didn't quite drop right. So I'm going to use my brush. It's a solder drop. That's one drop. Two drops. Since I did water the first time, I'm just going to use water again this time. Go one drop. So this is going to be 2 to 1. That was a full drop. This looks very similar to the wash, but the speed paint has a lot more paint pigment to the area. You know what? I can't just go over because I forgot. I scraped right through the primer layer. So what I'm going to have to do is reprime. You can also see I've got some places where when I painted his weapon, staff, I kind of touched the cape, made it ugly. It's kind of hard to tell because it creates a shadow anyway. But I can see it. I know it's there. Okay, and the primer is going to have to dry and then probably do another coat or two to kind of get it smooth. Okay, and I think Chani had some spots. Let me see. Might need to be reprimered. Good. And let me check Paul. He was my other one that I scraped. The other thing is where I scraped tended to be on these edges. So putting that primer on is just going to give me a kind of reinforcing the base I need so I can go in and do a really clean highlight. Okay, still a little bit of grit on that cape, but that's okay. Like I said, with the Fremen cape, it's not like a court cape. It can have some, look like tears maybe, fabric. All right, that looks definitely better face and better cape on Dr. Kynes. And we just do one more coat on Stilgar now that that's pretty dry. Okay, I'm back, and I think what I need to do is maybe fix a couple of the capes that I had scraped off and reprimered. So, I believe, hopefully it's still good. This is my pallid bone. And you got to be careful when you're working with speed paints because you don't always see the effect right away. Sometimes it's a bit of a delayed reaction, and then once that color really sets, it starts to change. So you got to kind of put it on and then wait and check it. It's almost like waiting to get film developed for all my Gen X people out there. Okay, so I'm going to put that down for Paul. Let me try here. This is Stilgar. Let's see. This doesn't look too bad. Stilgar. That is not Stilgar. That's my leader. Okay, most of these are fine. Looking good. This guy had one spot there. It's a little high contrast. Right. Paul, I'm worried about. He's going to be tougher. I'm not good at holding these. Stilgar. Here we go. Let's do this before I run out of my mix. Oh, wait and see how that comes out. I think that was it. Put a little bit on Jameis's Chris knife. No, Chani had a bunch. Shit, forgot. Oh, but her cloak is a different color. So this probably is not going to work. Her cloak is the gold color, same as Paul. Forgot I used a different color for them. Wait, kinds. This is good. Okay, I think that's it for those. Let's get Paul and Johnny's cloaks. So I used demonic yellow as the bright, desert yellow is the darker base color. So I'm going to make a mix here. Yellow is the darker base color. So I'm going to make a mix here. Let's do one drop. Third drop. Third drop. These are really just maybe half drops. I'm going to do this now. Equal amount. Right here I'm going to do a double amount. Here just a pure yellow. I'm going to go one more. Because last time I did the pure yellow, it didn't feel like it was quite enough. So now I'm going to add some white. So touch of white. Get a jump brush. All right, we're going to start. I'm going to kind of go back up from the beginning. So let's start with the base shadowy color and we'll highlight up from there. So there's just about a drop of water on the brush already. So I'm just going to kind of use that. And let's see. I'm going to just redo the whole thing. A little thick. And that is Johnny's cloak. Pretty simple. And we're going to do the same thing for Paul. They're the only two that have this particular color of cloak. Just kind of doing a full redo here on the cape. Start back with the darkest color, base color, which is, what's it called? Desert yellow? Yep, desert yellow. Just kind of do a little coat. I always try to brush in the line of the fabric. So if you do get a brush stroke or two, it doesn't detract. It might actually help out. Okay, and I'm going to let that dry. I'll check Johnny now. Yep, she's mostly dry. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go and mix up our second color, which is about 50-50 demonic yellow with the desert yellow. Super same color. So now the only thing that's going to stay that darkest color is going to be the stuff completely underneath. So I don't know if you can see this, but I'm going to go right here on this ridge. It's not completely underneath, so I'm going to all of these right here. It's that next color. So the second color is almost everything. Anything that's not really in shadow, buried underneath. So anything facing me, anything from the top, all that's going to be lightened up. It's Johnny. Back to Paul. So all of this. In the top. And you can't put it on too thick because you have to remember there's going to be multiple layers, except for the darkest color. Even the back here, I'm going to say that that is not the darkest color. I'm going to leave a little bit there. That's not the darkest color. This right here, not the darkest color. So just in these deepest recesses, am I going to leave it really dark? Now here, I'm going to just hit inside of all of these. None of this should be that dark. It's on his shoulder. Even those crevices would be getting a fair amount of light. Up under the neck, I'm going to leave that alone. Underneath, I'm going to leave that alone. Okay, back to Chani. So I typically use two methods for volume like this. Either I use a speed paint, which kind of is the cheaty quick way, which is great for game pieces. It's kind of what you need sometimes. Or I do it this way. I just step up. Now this is a lighter color, so I'm getting into it gets a little tougher here. So only stuff that's relatively bright. So like here, I'm gonna thread some of these areas here. Just a little line, so like you can see there, I left just a touch. Okay, that. It's hard to see what's happening. It's not quite dry. So here I'm going to do the top of this, top part here. This is more like getting into direct light. Down this edge. Okay, now here I'm going to go there. All these little edges that I can get. I'm gonna do. Okay, back to Johnny. Acrylics dries so fast you can just alternate with a couple of pieces, which is kind of nice. I have a little dryer if I needed to dry, but I think this is doing okay. This is pure demonic yellow now. So I need to get, as I get further and further down, I need a finer point. I might have to switch brushes soon. Let's see. I'll also might need to start working with optics, the magnifiers. Second to last highlight color. So I need to keep these pretty thin. Okay. Paul Atreides, let's see. Definitely right here. Very top part. Definitely right. This little ridge. Okay. It's brighter yellow. Looks great right when you put it on, and then it tones itself down when it dries. It dries a little bit darker. So just keep that in mind. Okay, maybe just catch a couple of these ridges. And I've got one more color. So now come in here. All right, Johnny. Just the most highlighty parts. That was a bit of a fat stroke. I've gone too light on that one, but too thick. I'll let that dry down a little bit. Let's see. Okay. There's definitely a little more of a step between this color and the last one, but part of it's just I applied it a little too thick. Ugh, wipe that off, wipe that off. It's too much. All right, I'll let that dry. So far, I kind of like the way that looks, though. I don't mind a little bit of, I don't know, not smooth. What do you call it? Okay, let's go back and check Chani. I think I overdid hers. Highlight. Oop. So I might need to, yeah. So what I do here is I just back up to the previous color. What I was just doing was redoing the capes. I did pause, get a little more highlight and all in there. And now Chani's, I kind of overdid the lighter highlight, so I went back and redid it. Mostly desert yellow, one step up with a little bit more highlight. And now I'm going to go to a thinner brush so I don't mess it up again. And this is just pure demonic yellow. Again, this is pure yellow, or pure right out of the bottle, demonic yellow. Okay, her cape is a lot more simple than Paul's. Okay, I'm gonna let that dry for a minute. This is demonic yellow with a little bit of white. Now I'm going to go into my last color. Using the edge of the brush here. It's kind of edging. that's much better. All right, I'm gonna leave that alone before I mess it up. Okay, so you can see that that is a little better. All right, and I think, let me see. I'm gonna look at these guys. Jameis, I don't have much characteristic in his face. I probably need to go in with some blue and get some of their eyes, maybe some colors for their lips. Jameis is very dark. I should probably go and highlight up a little bit. Let me see if I have a lighter brown. Okay, this is leather brown. Might have to add a little bit of white. I don't know, this color I made earlier is actually pretty good. Let me see. I can still salvage some of this. Yeah, this is that desert sand. So if I'm just doing highlights on his face, maybe cheekbones, forehead, nose, cheekbones, chin. I have to let that dry and see if it made any difference. Now Duncan, I'm not gonna loop Duncan's eyes. He wouldn't have Fremen blue eyes. But we did spend some time with him. All right, gems. Kind of got onto his cheek a little bit. I can just go back over and cover that with a skin color. Nondescript. His face is actually just a little melty. Oops. I got his cheek too. That's a big splotch. Okay. So yeah, note to self, it's probably better to do the eyes. Then afterwards go in and do the cheeks. Then if you have overspill from the eye, you can just get it off. Oh gosh, I just missed his whole head. Let's just wipe all that out. And Johnny, I think, is last. Now I'm going to go back. I can use pretty light skin tones for the cheeks since they're kind of in a natural highlight area to begin with. that overspill. Okay, let's see what I've done.